Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 14 of The Great Jahy Will Not Be Defeated. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, Jahy had a bit of a windfall on the beach in that she found 2 buckets full of mana crystal shards, and now she's got it into her mind that now is the time to accost the magical girl and defeat her once and for all. And I, for one, think this is an extraordinarily poor idea. It's not going to go well, and she's probably going to get stomped on pretty hard. So for Jahy, it's effectively Judgment Day now. You know, she's essentially laying her cards on the table saying, look, you stupid magical girl, I'm going to destroy you. And I feel like once you say something like that, there's no going back by pretending to be an innocent little kid. So the question is, I feel like there's no way Jahy can win this, so it's a question of will she get stomped on by the magical girl, or will something else happen here? And personally, I'm hoping for the former, but leaning towards the latter. You know? Like, I think it would be really funny if the magical girl just, like, put her in a chokehold and just battered her senseless. But I feel like more than likely some hitherto unforeseen circumstance is going to interrupt the fight, probably leading to a draw. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a bad storm or something. You know, not that like Jahy would be struck by lightning or anything. Funny though that would be, but I don't know. I mean, I guess I can't really see this having an extended action sequence, but you know, the longer this episode goes on, it seems like that's actually what we're getting. Although at the same time, Jahy is being rather generous with how she uses the mana crystals, tossing an entire bucket for, like, one little attack that didn't really do anything. You know, I feel like maybe in her position, she should be a bit more thrifty in how she uses this precious resource. I mean, I guess the idea is that if she does defeat the magical girl, then she can afford to collect all the remaining crystals in peace. But, you know, if she's just throwing them away recklessly and she doesn't win, then, you know, she's in an infinitely worse position. Oh, okay. Well, I guess that wasn't what the magical girl was expecting, saying like, you know, hey, you don't know anything about me, to which Jahy responds, no, I don't. So this is a little bit of an interesting backstory that the magical girl was always used to misfortune, therefore the mana crystals are no special thing to her, you know, it's just sort of more of the status quo. So if anyone righteous and good-hearted would, seek to collect them, she's the best suited for it. And I suppose that is a laudable goal. Certainly much better than Jahy's goal of, returning to her position as the second strongest in the Dark Realm so she can lord over her minions and mistreat them. And I suppose maybe Jahy wouldn't be quite so bad as she is, or as she used to be, rather, but I don't know. I feel like being put back into a position of power like that would probably cause some negative character growth. Now, I do find it a little interesting that Jahy is sort of, inverted things, as it were. Normally the hero fights with the help of their friends, even if only as moral support, but that's what Jahy's doing. The magical girl has no friends, therefore she fights alone. And I guess Jahy also has something of a tragic past. Her home was destroyed, she has nothing. Yeah, it's an interesting inversion of how things normally play out. And interestingly, Jahy's saying, look, you don't need to bear all the misfortune on your own shoulders. I'll free you from this burden, I'll take it upon myself. And it's sort of being inflected as selfless, but really, I don't think it is, all that selfless. In fact, it is kind of a selfish motive. Although it is interesting that Jahy also threw in there, I won't let you be alone anymore. That is, interestingly selfless for Jahy, and, bordering on uncharacteristic, I feel like. Because, sure, she does tolerate Druj and, all the other characters to varying degrees, but I don't know. I feel like if there's anyone she should hold umbrage against, it would be the magical girl. And just, saying look, we can be friends and all that. This feels more like the setup to a ploy where Jahy's gonna drop her down into an oubliette or something at the first possible opportunity. I mean, I guess the last episode did, or maybe not the last, maybe the episode before that, one or the two, there was considerable focus on Jahy sort of becoming soft in Druzh's mind, and I don't know. There was something to it that Jahy is becoming soft, and she's even sort of aware of it herself, but I feel like this is getting way too soft way too quickly. Because, just like that, they're already, if not friends, then certainly acquaintances. And I mean, despite ostensibly being opposed to one another, the magical girl's just hey, I'll show you over to my house. I've got snacks and stuff. We can have a fun time. Oh, man. Jahy blows her off saying I have to work, but, the promise of snacks, the promise of food that you don't have to pay for, that's as good as anything, Now, I feel like Jahy might have overplayed things a little bit, because sure, the magical girl's on her side now, but as someone who seemingly never had friends, she doesn't know how to react to friends and how to act around them, which, it's not like Jahy's a remarkably socially competent person, but ooh. So it seems like Jahy has blundered slightly, It's interesting that just the slight denial of friendship is enough to cause the magical girl to spiral like this. So, really, I feel like the real loser is Jahy, because now she has to put up with someone else. Ooh, okay, we're learning a little bit of neat lore. So the magical girl just sort of didn't necessarily want to destroy the Dark Realm, It was seemingly not of her own volition. And she's, sorry even. Which, well, that's quite interesting indeed. Because, she was supposedly under the impression that destroying the mana crystal would free the world of misfortune. Clearly that's not the case, but this sort of puts in my mind the idea that someone else here is pulling strings. And I get the feeling it might be the Dark Lord herself, because we've seen her in the opening credits and the ending credits, and we've seen her predilection for eating snacks a lot, but not much else in the way of being evil or anything. So I'm wondering if maybe there's going to be some insane twist where the Dark Lord just wanted to have, human snacks, so she orchestrated the destruction of the Dark World to allow that to happen. Man, home sweet home. Nothing says a nice cozy place to live like the floor collapsing and the ceiling collapsing and everything being riddled with various forms of many-legged insects. Yeah, I feel like Jahy really is doing the magical girl a real big favor by removing all the mana crystals from this obviously haunted house. Like, man, if this is what mana crystals do to a place when they're all concentrated, boy. Oh, okay. So the magical girl thought this creature was a ghost, and maybe she's not outside of the ballpark, so to speak, but... Huh. It's interesting that the Demon Lord has just sort of taken up residence in a closet. I guess, she does have that sort of gremlin appearance whereby living in a closet would be no bad thing for her, but... Huh. I'm wondering if the Dark Lord's mere presence is contributing to the state of the house. I mean, she's certainly stealing food. Ooh. Alright, Jahy scored a solid hit. That's something. Although, I feel like a magical girl wouldn't necessarily see fit to bow down to the Dark Lord, Now, it is interesting that the Dark Lord has seemingly suffered a similar fate to Jahy, being merely a fraction of what she once was. Although she seems to be far more content to just sit around and eat and, not really say anything. It is interesting that Jahy has now adopted a servile position, because while she did lord herself over everyone and everything else in the Dark Realm, she still wasn't quite the top of the food chain. Okay. So that's very interesting. The mana crystal that was shattered could be thought of as the Dark Lord's heart, and that mana crystals are the Dark Lord and all that. So, okay, we're approaching weird territory here, whereby the Dark Lord could not manifest without a sufficient quantity of mana crystals. Yeah, so that sort of indicates to me that the Dark Lord isn't really a person so much as like an avatar of an otherwise inanimate thing. I mean, I guess that sort of makes sense why she doesn't really speak much. Jahy sure seems to interpret her movements, but... Huh. So I guess what I'm wondering is the Dark Lord sapient in any meaningful way? Because she sure likes to eat a lot. But, I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's really any lights on upstairs, So I feel like with all this talk of cookies and juice and all that, Jahy might be learning the wrong lesson here, and that any little bit of meaningful praise to the magical girl will get her to bend over backwards. And knowing how Jahy is, that's something that's very easy to abuse. and something she will no doubt stoop to in short order. So I find it interesting that Jahy is now, disappointed about there not being any food. Like, that makes sense given how she is, but I would feel like trying to curry favor from the Dark Lord would be more important than that, Now, unfortunately, while they're just sort of dallying, the Dark Lord's just eating, and, no matter how much food you do have, it seems like the Dark Lord is sort of like a void, that just inhales it all. Sort of like how water adapts the shape of its container, the Dark Lord sort of conforms to the amount of food there is. Now, it is interesting that of all the great, horrible things Jahy has suffered, this is just kind of ranking up there, because the Dark Lord saves the lion's share of food for herself and passes off a little tiny morsel for Jahy. And like Jahy treats this one little morsel as a great boon, Like, it isn't, but I feel like if you're dealing with the Dark Lord, maybe it helps to be servile. Okay, so we're actually just getting back into the destruction of the Dark Realm, I kind of figured that would just be like a little one-off line, just like a little bit of intrigue for this episode, but it seems like we're actually getting into the fine details that led up to it. And I guess perhaps telling, the magical girl behaved heroically, It's certainly not nothing to jump into a river after a drowning kitten, and it's, even more considerable when you do that in the middle of winter. It's like, that's a good way to get sick and die or freeze to death. And I guess, case in point, it seems like the magical girl very nearly perished just by slipping and falling back in, but, some higher power had a different idea here. And I'm wondering if... Well, no, I guess not. This entity, whatever it is, decided that, she's suffered misfortune, so it's time to slap back, as it were. I was wondering if maybe it was her sense of morality, diving in after a drowning kitten, but it seems more that her power is in proportion to her capacity for withstanding misfortune. Although it is rather telling that the magical girl is willing to atone for this, saying like, look, I did a bad thing, I'll make up for the bad thing. So it seems like despite all her faults, she is, at the very least, a good person. So, unfortunately, I think Jahy's getting a little ahead of herself, because, yeah, they do need to find whoever's in charge here and fight him off, but Jahy's claiming that the Dark Lord is, their ace in the hole, but really, she doesn't seem all that impressive right now. I mean, impressive in the sense that she ate an incredible amount of food, but, I don't think that's going to help them in any meaningful way. It is interesting that Jahy's almost adopting a Druj-like persona. She's not quite as bad, not quite as masochistic, but, she is certainly acting like a stereotypical underling to the Dark Lord. I mean, at the very least, Jahy's lucky that the Dark Lord doesn't treat her like she treated her underlings, because, boy, howdy, that would be unfortunate. Although, there might be punishment inbound. It seems like Jahy's misinterpreting, much to the Dark Lord's chagrin. Ooh. So if Jahy's interpretation can be trusted, it seems like the Dark Lord is far more sensible than anyone else here. Although it seems like that might not be the case. Ooh. Okay, so the magical girl, she's making an interesting proposal. Like, hey, how about you guys all just live here? As if the place isn't on the verge of being condemned. So I wonder if Jahy's already sort of going back on her friendship. Like, I guess it's one thing, you can't have the magical girl living with the Dark Lord. But at the same time, is Jahy prepared to take on a roommate who does nothing but eat and not contribute to things? I feel like that's a really great way to go homeless. Although it seems like the Dark Lord is far more attached to the magical girl than she is to Jahy. Although, mainly because of all the food. I like how Jahy despairs as if she wasn't attracted here by the food. Wow, so I guess in the end, Jahy was defeated by the magical girl. Well, surely they can still be friends, right? This doesn't have to be the end of their beautiful friendship, surely, Even if Jahy is a lesser lackey than her greatest rival. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.